working to connect a region of over 600 million bridges between our lands.
Welcome to ASEAN in Focus and welcome to an hour news in ASEAN region and beyond. This is Faye Barta from your EBC Thailand Bureau.
Hello, I'm Eliana Sebastian from EBC Vietnam Bureau, bringing you the news in the dynamic ASEAN region.
And on tonight's headlines.
In recent times, many public figures from a broad spectrum of
U.S. Senator Marsha Blackburn landed in Taiwan late Thursday, the fourth visit by an American politician this month and a move bound to rile Beijing, which has staged huge military drills to protest such trips.
Senator
Blackburn.
And Myanmar authorities have arrested Britain's former ambassador to the country and her husband, a prominent artist and one-time political prisoner, for allegedly violating immigration laws. And it's been 5 years since more than 700,000 ethnic Rohingya fled from Myanmar to Bangladesh to escape a military crackdown. And today, Myanmar's human rights catastrophe continues to worsen. And an exclusive interview with Martin Rivera by our very own MJ Racadio.
Is that we really have...
And first in our news, U.S. Senator Marsha Blackburn has arrived in Taiwan following visits to the Solomon Islands and Papua New Guinea. This is the fourth visit by an American politician this month, since House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit triggered Beijing's unprecedented show of force around the island earlier this month. Let's take a look.
欢迎和感谢。
In recent times, many public figures from a broad spectrum of U.S. society have visited Taiwan. These warm acts of kindness and firm demonstrations of support have reinforced Taiwan's determination to defend itself. On behalf of all the people of Taiwan, I would like to extend a warm welcome and express our sincere gratitude to Senator Blackburn.
Blackburn 参议员是在美国。
Senator Blackburn is an important force of resolute support for Taiwan on Capitol Hill. Recently, she introduced legislation to bolster U.S. backing for Taiwan to enhance our self-defense capabilities. In the future, we look forward to working hand-in-hand with the United States and other like-minded democracies to safeguard peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific region. Lately, there have been major shifts in the global landscape. Russia invaded Ukraine, and China continued to conduct prolonged military exercises. These developments demonstrate how authoritarian countries are disrupting and threatening the world order. Just last week, Taiwan and the United States simultaneously announced the commencement of formal talks on the U.S.-Taiwan Initiative on 21st Century Trade. I am confident that through this platform, we can continue to deepen Taiwan-U.S. economic and trade relations in all areas. At the same time, it is our wish to be further integrated into the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework for Prosperity and other regional economic cooperation architecture.
You are so accurate when you mention the shared values that we have, loving freedom, loving democracy. And it is important indeed that freedom-loving nations support Taiwan as they seek to preserve their independence and their freedom.
时代的经济挑战。
Taiwan has built up a wealth of experience in developing its semiconductor industry. We are delighted to see many semiconductor businesses investing in the United States. We also look forward to working with the United States to strengthen cooperation on semiconductors and other high-tech sectors and jointly respond to the economic challenges of the post-pandemic era.
In Tennessee, we have much of our nation's auto manufacturing. And you mentioned the semiconductor issue. That is something that is very important to us. We appreciate the fact that so many of our auto manufacturers do call Tennessee home, and that creates good paying jobs for our citizens. So the supply chain issues that surround our critical supply chain and that infrastructure are vitally important to us.
So nice to see you here.
And Pelosi, second in line to the U.S. presidency after the vice president, was the highest-ranking elected American official to visit Taiwan in decades. Taiwan has accused Beijing of using Pelosi's visit as an excuse to kickstart drills that could serve as a rehearsal for an invasion. And China's military figures have spoken publicly about the exercises being a dry run for a possible blockade of Taiwan. While the Biden administration was quietly opposed to Pelosi's visit, the United States maintains a separation of powers between its executive and legislative branches and repeatedly said in public that she had the right to travel. Like most nations, the United States officially recognizes China over Taiwan, but it remains a key ally of Taipei and maintains de facto diplomatic ties with the island. And Washington's policy or official policy opposes both Taiwan declaring independence and China forcibly changing the island's status.
Taiwan announced plans for a record increase to its defense budget on Thursday after huge military drills by China earlier this month sent tensions between the two to their highest in decades. Taipei has proposed a defense budget of $13.7 billion for next year, up 13% year-on-year, pending parliamentary approval. An additional special budget will also be created specifically to acquire new fighter jets and other projects to boost naval and air capabilities, the top budgeting agency said in a statement. The bolstered military budget was unveiled after Beijing staged unprecedented exercises around Taiwan in retaliation for U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taipei earlier this month. For a week after Pelosi's visit, China sent warships, missiles, and fighter jets into the waters and skies around Taiwan, its largest and most aggressive exercises since the mid-1990s.
And staying in Taiwan, President Tsai Ing-wen says that the Taiwanese people remain resolved to defend the island following China's huge military drills. She also warns Beijing that a heavy price will be paid for invading or attempting to invade Taiwan. Once again, let's take a look.
我们要做的就是让敌人明白，台湾有保卫国家的决心和准备，也有自我防卫的能力。侵略台湾或者是试图侵略台湾，将付出很大的代价，更将遭受国际社会强烈的谴责。
President Tsai made the remarks when meeting a visiting delegation of U.S. scholars on the 64th anniversary of a Chinese artillery attack known as the 823 bombardment. Taiwan lives under constant threat of an invasion by China, which claims the self-ruled democracy as part of its territory to be seized one day by force if necessary.
Myanmar authorities have arrested Britain's former ambassador to the country and her husband, a prominent artist and one-time political prisoner, for allegedly violating immigration laws. Vicky Bauman, who served as envoy from 2002 to 2006, was detained for failing to declare she was living at an address different from the one listed on her foreigner's registration certificate. The junta said her husband, Dane Lin, was arrested for helping his wife reside at an address different to the registered home in Yangon. A hearing had been set for September 6, although it was not known what would take place then. Breaching immigration law carries a maximum of 5 years in prison. The arrest comes as Britain announces that it is imposing fresh sanctions to target military-linked businesses in Myanmar. Britain is also joining the case against Myanmar in the International Court of Justice. Britain is the fourth country after the Maldives, Netherlands, and Canada to vow formal support for the case brought by the Gambia against Myanmar to determine whether its military conducted genocidal operations against Rohingya Muslims in 2016 and 2017.
And in a related news, Rohingya refugees held Genocide Remembrance Day rallies across the huge network of squalid camps in Bangladesh, where they live in dire conditions. And this marks 5 years since fleeing from a brutal military offensive in Myanmar. Let's take a look. In August 2017, around 750,000 of the Muslim minorities streamed over the border from mostly Buddhist Myanmar from the onslaught. It is now the subject of a landmark genocide case at the UN's top court, and today there are nearly 1 million Rohingya, half of them under 18, is rickety huts in a network of camps in northeastern Bangladesh. And their mud lanes regularly become rivers of sewage during monsoon rains.
It's been 5 years since more than 700,000 ethnic Rohingya fled from Myanmar to Bangladesh to escape a military crackdown. Today, Myanmar's human rights catastrophe continues to worsen, UN Human Rights Chief Michelle Bachelet said on Thursday. Speaking in Geneva, Ms. Bachelet said that Myanmar's Tatmadaw forces had maintained and even escalated operations against civilians in residential areas in southeast, northwest, and central regions 18 months since they overthrew the government. Take a look.
Today marks 5 years since more than 700,000 Rohingya women, children, and men were forced to flee Myanmar for Bangladesh. And Myanmar's human rights catastrophe continues to worsen, with the military, the Tatmadaw, maintaining military operations in Kaya and Kayin in the southeast, Chin State in the northwest, and Sagaing and Magway regions in the Bamar heartland. The use of air power and artillery against villages and residential areas has intensified. Recent spikes in violence in Rakhine State also seem to indicate that the last fairly stable area of the country may not avoid a resurgence of armed conflict. Rohingya communities have frequently been caught between the Tatmadaw and Arakan army fighters or have been targeted directly in operations. Over 14 million need humanitarian assistance. We continue to document gross human rights violations and serious violations of international humanitarian law on a daily basis, including repression against protesters and attacks against civilians that may amount to crimes against humanity and war crimes.
Rohingya communities have frequently been caught between the Tatmadaw and rebel Arakan army fighters or have been targeted directly in operations. Over 14 million need humanitarian assistance.
Meanwhile, after 3 decades at the helm of Human Rights Watch, Kenneth Roth has come to believe that all governments try to cover up their abuse. In an interview ahead of vacating his role, Roth looks back on the ups and downs, the victories and defeats since he became HRW's executive director in 1993. Take a look.
As I look back over the last 3 decades, there are parts of the world that are much better off. There are others where there have been not big changes, and some are even worse off. But I guess the positive news is that the human rights movement is much more powerful. It exists every place today. It's able to observe what governments do virtually every place. And so the ability of the human rights movement to identify serious abuses and generate serious pressure for change is much greater today than it was 3 decades ago when I began this work. It's virtually impossible for governments to hide their abuses, particularly in an era of social media where everybody has a smartphone, everybody can take pictures and videos and post them on social media. So, our ability to watch what governments do is greatly increased. And every government, including China's, tries to cover up their abuse, try to deny that it's happening, they try to justify it, but they never say, oh, it's okay to be violating human rights. And that's why the human rights movement can be powerful. I never see a situation that is hopeless. So, for example, even today in the Xinjiang region of China, where the Chinese government is detaining, 1 million Uyghur Muslims to force them to abandon their religion, their culture, and their language. That's, one of the biggest crimes against humanity being committed today. But we are in the middle of a big battle with China. We have gotten 47 governments to condemn what's going on. We're waiting today for Michelle Bachelet to finally issue her report. We're moving toward the possibility of a UN Human Rights Council resolution. These are all things that the Chinese government is desperate to avoid.
Malaysia's jailed former Prime Minister Najib Razak returned to court Thursday to face more charges linked to a multi-billion-dollar financial scandal at State Fund 1MDB 2 days after he began serving a 12-year prison term. Najib, 69, was sent to prison Tuesday after the federal court, Malaysia's highest tribunal, upheld his sentence in the initial batch of charges linked to the scandal that brought down his government in 2018. Najib was found guilty in that case of abuse of power, money laundering, and criminal breach of trust over the transfer of 42 million ringgit or $10 million from SRC International, a former unit of 1MDB, to his personal bank account. Thursday's hearing at the High Court pertained to 4 charges of abuse of power stemming from Najib's alleged pilfering of 2.3 billion ringgit from the State Investment Fund, as well as 21 counts of money laundering involving the same amount. He faces a maximum of 20 years in jail for abuse of power and up to 15 years for money laundering if convicted.
Now in other news, monkeypox cases fell by a fifth last week as infections in Europe dropped, but the outbreak is going through intense transmission in the Americas. Let's listen in.
Last week, the number of weekly reported cases fell by more than 20% globally. Although new cases increased in the Americas, where we are counting to see intense transmission. In the early stages of the outbreak, most reported cases were in Europe, with a smaller proportion in the Americas. That has now reversed, with less than 40% of reported cases in Europe and 60% in the Americas. There are signs that the outbreak is slowing in Europe, where a combination of effective public health measures, behavior change, and vaccination are helping to prevent transmission. However, in Latin America in particular, insufficient awareness or public health measures are combining with a lack of access to vaccines to fan the flames of the outbreak. Yesterday, the manufacturer of one vaccine, Bavarian Nordic, signed an agreement with WHO's regional office for the Americas to support access to its vaccine in Latin America and the Caribbean. WHO continues to encourage all countries to establish vaccine effectiveness studies to ensure data collection, even while enhancing access.
And 16 countries have not reported new cases for more than 21 days. And 21 days is the maximum incubation period of this disease. Among cases with sexual orientation reported, 96% identified as men who had sex with men. And the median age of cases was 36, as sexual encounter was the most commonly reported type of transmission at 82%.
The World Health Organization announced on Thursday that 1 million people had died from COVID-19 in 2022, calling it a tragic milestone when all the tools existed to prevent deaths. Take a look.
This week, we crossed the tragic milestone of 1 million reported deaths so far this year. We cannot say we're learning to live with COVID-19 when 1 million people have died with COVID-19 this year alone. When we are 2.5 years into the pandemic and have all the tools necessary to prevent these deaths. Once again, we ask all governments to strengthen their efforts to vaccinate all health workers, older people, and others at the highest risk on the way to 70% vaccine coverage for the whole population. It's pleasing to see that some countries with the lowest vaccination rates are now making up ground, especially in Africa. Much more needs to be done. 1/3 of the world's population remains unvaccinated, including 2/3 of health workers and 3/4 of older adults in low-income countries. All countries at all income levels must do more to vaccinate those most at risk, to ensure access to life-saving therapeutics, to continue testing and sequencing, and to set tailored, proportionate policies to limit transmission and save lives. This is the best way to drive a truly sustainable recovery.
Tedros wanted all countries to have vaccinated 70% of their populations by the end of June, but 136 countries failed to reach the target, of which 66 still had coverage below 40%.
And finally, in our news, here is an exclusive interview with the concert king himself, Martin Rivera, by our Los Angeles correspondent, MJ Recatio.
Philippines concert king Martin Rivera celebrating 4 decades of entertaining and performing around the globe. History in the making as he performs at the Walt Disney Concert Hall this weekend. I had a one-on-one interview with him. Take a look.
What did you learn all this, 2 years during the pandemic? Share us.
Wow, I learned so many things. The most important lesson I learned at the end of everything is that we really have only each other to depend on. That's probably one time in all our lives when we literally cared for each other, cared for ourselves, and paranoia is part of that caring. Not wanting to be where there's big groups, wearing a mask in respect for the people around you, testing yourself, washing your hands, you know the drill. All of these things we went through that we were taught during the pandemic taught us that important lesson, that we need to be there for each other, and that no one is excluded from this virus. Rich, poor, popular, good-looking, ugly, we're all gonna get this virus if we're not careful. So I think there was, in a way, maybe God was trying to tell us, or putting us in our place so we can continue our lives more humble, more grateful, more simple.
So now, what advice for those who wants to be in the music industry? Because I know you've been in for 40 years, especially there's a young Generation Z. What advice can you give them, Martin?
Well, you have to be in it for the right reasons. Yeah. I know everyone has a different story. My story was, it was my dream. and I'm living the dream. That's why my job, I love my job, even to this day. Not one boring moment. I never once said, I have to keep doing this. No, I love it. That's me. But for some of you out there who think that being in becoming a singer or an artista, a host, or whatever it is, it's not. If you're in it for the money, for that immediate fame and fortune, those are the wrong reasons for you to be in this business. Some of us have it, some of us don't have it. I'm very lucky. When I started 40 years ago, zero talent. I didn't make it because of talent. I made it because I was living my dream. I was one of those kids who was given a day pass in a toy store and said, you can get whatever you want. You have 1 hour to shop, get whatever you want, it's all yours. That's how I was, that's how I attacked every project, everything that came my way. Oh my God, how do you do this? Oh my God, I get to meet these people. Oh my God, I get to sing in front of an audience. Oh my God, 45,000 people. Oh my God, 10,000 people. It was like a gift for me. But for some of you who think that it's an easy road to success, an easy road to money, as quick as you go up, you go quicker down, because you cannot relax. You cannot think for 1 second. You cannot believe your great write-ups. You cannot believe that the person who gave you a standing ovation and said, you're the best. Don't believe it. Keep doing it. Keep doing it, because if you're doing it for all the right reasons, the way I have been doing it, you will enjoy your singing career forever. And others who watch will benefit from that kind of performance. Nothing worse than watching someone who thinks he's all that, and that's all he does is talk about himself, and everything's about self-worth, and I've done this, I've got sold out here. These are words I try to stay away from, because I want a job tomorrow. I want people to watch me again the next day and the next day. I want producers who produce me to make money, so they ask me back and ask me back, hoping that no one gets tired of this and my songs. And that's the only risk. You're going to be in this business, do it for the right reasons. If you have the tools, the voice, that's great, but you need more desire, more humility if you want to last in this business. You can be a great singer. I can name 100 great singers who don't even have an album yet, who don't have a concert tour, who's not being interviewed by MJ. There's a lot of people who deserve that and have not reached that point in their life yet, because they think that their first attempt at a concert or as a recording artist, because he or she hit gold, that's it. That's not it. There's more to the story. There's more to your journey.
That is it for entertainment news. MJ Ricardo here. Always tune in to Net25, because we live in an extraordinary times.
Thank you so much, MJ, and thank you so much, Mr. Martin Rivera. Indeed, practicing humility in all aspects of our lives is really important. And once again, thank you for joining us, and thank you for hearing all the news in ASEAN region and beyond. Once again, this is Faye Barta from your EBC Thailand Bureau.
And I'm Eliana Sebastian from your EBC Vietnam Bureau in the Live in Extraordinary Times.
Thank you for watching News in Extraordinary Times. Have a great night ahead.